The trucking reset I told you about, it's real. It's happening. And now, the biggest money on Wall Street is putting their chips on the table to back it up. So hold the line. Keep your equipment running and keep your authority clean. Morgan Stanley estimates that heightened regulatory enforcement, specifically the things that we've talked about, like the Clearinghouse 2 implementation and stricter CDL verification, combined with skyrocketed insurance costs, could remove more than 5% of the total industry's capacity. In 2020 and 2021, anybody with a pulse and a down payment could buy a truck and get on the road. Today, new authorities are finding it almost impossible to get affordable coverage. This means the churn has stopped. The revolving door is closing. They are calling it a supply-side spark. Let me repeat that. A supply-side spark. On this video, we're going deep into this report. We're going to break down why Wall Street is suddenly betting on a trucking comeback, why they believe 5% of all trucks are about to vanish from the road, and most importantly, how you can position yourself to make money when the rates flip. This is the validation that we've been waiting for. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we don't just read the news headlines, we analyze what's actually happening on the ground so you can run your business like a professional. Let's set the stage before we dive into the Morgan Stanley numbers. For the last 2 years, every conversation in trucking has been about demand. Everyone asks, when will people start buying stuff again? When will manufacturing pick up? When will the ports get busy? We have been obsessed with the idea that the only way trucking gets better is if the economy suddenly booms. But in my last video, I gave you a different theory. I told you to stop looking at demand and start looking at supply. I told you that the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, the FMCSA, and state agencies were finally getting serious. We talked about tens of thousands of CDLs being downgraded, and we talked about the fraud prevention measures kicking in. My argument was simple. If you have the same amount of freight, but fewer trucks to haul it, then the rates go up. And that brings us to this week's bombshell report from Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley's analysts just released a report predicting a trucking recovery in 2026. But here's the kicker. They explicitly state that this recovery will not be driven by a sudden boom in the economy. They are calling it a supply-side spark. Let me repeat that. A supply-side spark. They're telling their investors that even if the economy stays flat, even if people don't buy a single extra flat screen TV next year, truck rates are going to rise. Why? Because the trucks are disappearing. Let's look at the specific numbers that they use because they are staggering. Morgan Stanley estimates that heightened regulatory enforcement, specifically the things that we've talked about, like the Clearinghouse 2 implementation and stricter CDL verification, combined with skyrocketed insurance costs, could remove more than 5% of the total industry's capacity. Now 5%, that might sound like a small number to you, but you might think, who cares about 5%? In economics, a 5% sudden drop in supply is massive. It's a shock to the system. Imagine if 5% of the gas stations in your city shut down overnight. You would see lines at the pump. You would see prices jump. That is what Wall Street is predicting for the trucking capacity. Let's break down the two main factors they cited because they directly impact your daily operation. First, they pointed to heightened regulatory enforcement. This validates everything that we've been covering regarding the CDL crackdown. For years, we had a flood of drivers entering this industry who, quite frankly, they shouldn't have been here. We had the CDL mills, we had the guys running under someone else's authority, and we also had the chameleon carriers. That shadow capacity kept rates artificially low. It's hard for you to negotiate a fair rate of $3 a mile when there is a guy with a fake CDL and no insurance willing to haul that same load for $1.50. But as the DOT tightens the net, these guys are getting parked. And when they get parked, they don't come back. The second factor Morgan Stanley highlighted is insurance costs. We all know insurance is a nightmare right now, but Wall Street sees this as a barrier to entry. In 2020 and 2021, anybody with a pulse and a down payment could buy a truck and get on the road. Today, new authorities are finding it almost impossible to get affordable coverage. This means the churn has stopped. The revolving door is closing. The drivers leaving the industry aren't being replaced by new rookies at the same speed. So what does this mean for the rate floor? Morgan Stanley says this supply shock will put a rising floor on rates in 2026. Think of the floor as the absolute lowest price a shipper can pay to move a load. For the last 2 years, that floor has been in the basement. It's been below operating costs for many of you. But as capacity tightens, that floor lifts. Shippers will pick up the phone expecting to pay 2024 cheap rates, and they're going to hear, sorry, there's no trucks available. They'll call the next carrier. No trucks available. Eventually, they have to pay more, not because they want to, but because they have no choice. Now, I want to address the skeptics again. I know some of you are thinking, I've heard this before. The experts always say a recovery is coming. And you're right to be skeptical. Analysts get it wrong all the time. But usually, analysts are wrong because they overestimate demand. They predict a booming economy that never happens. This prediction is different because it's based on supply. We can see the supply leaving. We see the revocation numbers. We can see the bankruptcy filings. We can see the enforcement blitz. This isn't a guess about how many iPhone consumers will buy. This is simple math about how many trucks are left to haul them. So the big question is, if the supply side spark is coming in 2026, what should you be doing now? If you are watching this, you are a survivor. You made it through the bloodbath of 2024 and 2025. But surviving, that isn't the goal. Thriving is the goal. Here is my 3-step action plan based on this new data. Step 1, guard your safety score with your life. If the recovery is driven by a regulatory crackdown, that means the enforcement is only going to get stricter. The DOT isn't done. One bad inspection, one compliance slip up, and you could be part of that 5% statistic that gets wiped out right before the finish line. Check your lights, watch your logs, do not give them a single reason to put you out of service. You want to be the last man standing, not the last casualty. Step 2. Start thinking about your contracts. If spot rates are about to spike because of supply shortage, you don't want to be locked into a cheap long-term contract that you signed during a recession. Shippers are smart. They read these Morgan Stanley reports too. They know capacity is tightening. Some of them might try to lock you in now at a low rate for the next 2 years to protect themselves. Don't take that bait. If you sign a contract now, make sure there are renegotiation clauses, or keep your exposure to the spot market open so you can ride that wave up when it hits. Step 3, know your value. When the market flips, it flips fast. We saw it in 2018 and we saw it in 2020. 1 week you are begging for loads, the next week brokers are calling you 5 times a day. You need to be mentally ready to raise your rates. Stop bidding out of fear and stop bidding like it's 2024. When you see the capacity tighten in your lane, have the confidence to ask for that extra 50 cents or $1 a mile. The shippers who need their freight moved will pay it because the cheap illegal trucks they used to use are parked in a repo lot somewhere. Look, I take no pleasure in seeing people lose their businesses. It's tragic that 5% of the industry has to fail for the rest of us to succeed. But this is the reality of the free market. It's a cycle. We have been in the purge phase of the cycle for a long time. It has been painful. It has been exhausting. But this report from Morgan Stanley is the first real sign that we are transitioning from the purge phase to the recovery phase. The trucking reset I told you about, it's real. It's happening. And now, the biggest money on Wall Street is putting their chips on the table to back it up. So hold the line, keep your equipment running, and keep your authority clean. The supply chain is coming back. The rate floor is rising, and if you are still here in 2026, you're going to be in the driver's seat, literally and financially. I want to know what you think. Are you seeing this capacity shortage in your lanes yet? Are brokers calling you more often? Or is it still quite dead out there? Drop a comment below. I read all of them. And I want to know what the real boots on the ground perspective is compared to the Wall Street suits. If you got value from this breakdown, do me a favor. Hit the like button. It helps the algorithm show this video to more drivers. And make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next update. Also, check out the video on the screen below where I talk about the hidden costs in the trucking business. I talk about the breakdowns, the hidden fees, and how to budget to survive. And if you're trying to get into Final Mile, grab my Final Mile contract plug pack. The link is in the description box below. I'll see you on the next video.
Thank you.